Time for the Talkin' Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread of NFL.com and Crimson Cover Television. Joined, as always, by Travis Reier, the senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. The Talkin' Tide podcast available to you at our web host at megaphone.com. You can get it on any podcasting app you prefer as well, Apple Podcasts and all the like. Catch us on YouTube and Facebook, live streaming and video replays in both of those places. And of course, the Twitter feed for Talkin' Tide is at Talkin_Tide. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter, and you'll get links to our podcast twice weekly in the football season. Immediately, as soon as those pods drop, we go to it on Twitter. I want to thank quickly a couple of sponsors: North River Dental Associates, Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa, and DraftKings. We'll tell you about those sponsors a little later in the program. But here on a Sunday nighter, Travis, we break down Alabama's home win over Tennessee. The final score 52-24. And if you just looked at the box score and you didn't see the game, or even if you just saw the final score, people more than likely, Travis, shrugged their shoulders and thought another route. And sure enough, Alabama covered a 24-point spread, which I didn't think they would do. So in the end, definitely a blowout margin. However, despite the what the final scoreboard reads, the red flags for this Alabama team continue to blow stiff and fly high, do they not?
They do. I mean, take a pick, really, from just about any angle you want. Fumbling inside the Tennessee 10 like Jamison Williams did, that's not a good thing offensively. Special teams had a couple of breakdowns between a roughing the punter penalty on a 4th and 23 and then gave up a blocked punt early in the third quarter. Alabama did everything it could, and you got to give Tennessee credit. Tennessee made some things happen, made a good bit of things happen. And I think there's also, we talk about flags and signs and things like that. I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you said it. It was a 28-point Alabama win, but you probably felt better about that Alabama win in this long streak that the Crimson Tide has over Tennessee than you felt about just about all the rest of the losses when you look at them in their totality. So, no, Alabama, we'll talk about it, I know, as we go throughout the podcast, really in every phase of the game, made some critical mistakes that if you talk about big picture goals and things like that, they don't tend to lend themselves to success in those areas.
You're right. We'll start out taking a look at Alabama's offense for the game, and they rang up over 500 yards of total offense and a ton of points. And so you start with that, right? You start with the obvious. They moved the ball. They scored a ton of points. It was more than enough to win. Alabama played really well on that side of the ball for much of the game. But, Travis, however, as you said, a couple of drops. There was a big drop by Jaleel Billingsley. There was a drop by Jamison Williams early in the game. I thought Alabama got away from the running game in the third quarter. And when we saw Alabama's offense bogged down a little bit, it was there in that third quarter where it seemed to me like they were almost trying to play more of a Mac Jones offense and just sit in the pocket and look deep and look for stuff, between the hashes, between the numbers. For my money, I think you run the ball, you run waggle off of that, you keep things simple, and you're going to move the ball. I haven't seen Alabama struggle when they stick to the simple stuff offensively all season long. But where they get in trouble here and there offensively, I think, is when they're trying to sit in the pocket and throw the intermediate to deeper routes. Sometimes Bryce Young will hold it too long, as we saw. He'll take an ill-advised sack here or there. But, for the most part, I thought they played exceptionally well. But that third quarter is where I started thinking, you know what, just hand the ball to Robinson a little bit more right here.
Yeah, it seems like they still get a little impatient at times. You thought maybe after the Ole Miss game, they had a little bit more of a recipe for who they were, with some bigger sets and more of that approach that you're talking about. And we say that Brian Robinson still ends up with his third 100-yard rushing performance in the last 4 games, but it's the stretches of sort of identityless football, I guess we could say. Not to say that Bryce Young hasn't been a big part of the identity of this team, because he absolutely has. I mean, throws for 371 on Saturday night. But in terms of how they're built, yeah, as a football team, I don't know if that always best suits them. And I start with that offensive line. If you put that offensive line, this offensive line, not last year's offensive line, this offensive line in a situation where you're going to throw it 40 plus times, even if you do run 92 plays like they were able to do in the game Saturday night, you're probably going to have some protection issues. And that showed up from time to time. But, I tell you what's good, though. If you are going to throw it around, Chase, you can get John Mechie going for these 100-yard games like he's done each of the last 2 weeks to go along with Jamison Williams. And now you can justify, I think, more of that if both those guys are going to give you those kind of performances.
Yeah, Mechie's definitely come on the last couple of weeks, had a couple of really nice catches and runs against the Vols. There's no doubt about it. He's kind of come alive here lately. And Jamison Williams, he's had a couple of games where he's caught a whole lot of balls, but there's been more often than not, Williams is going to give you that explosion maybe on 2 catches, right, or 3 catches. Mechie, I think he might, by the end of this season, be the more reliable guy to go to, just getting the sticks moved and playing in traffic. So it definitely big for Alabama to get John Mechie involved a little bit more. Couple other thoughts. Brian Robinson, Travis, from what I'm seeing, is really improved in the area of patience and vision, right? I mean, if you think back to early in his career when he was seeing some backup action behind Najee Harris, he had a lot of strength. He had a lot of power, not so much patience. He would just hit whatever he saw. Now we're starting to see him hesitate a little bit, stutter step, let the blocks kind of set up for him. And it's working well for him. He's breaking tackles. He's not a super fast guy. And typically when you talk about guys who like to settle in behind blocks and wait for a crease, it's a super fast guy, right, who's looking to hit the home run. That's not who Robinson is. He's a power runner. But from what I'm seeing, he's helping himself a lot with the patience and the vision that he's been showing of late, especially against Tennessee.
Well, I think 5 years into this, he knows exactly who he is as a back. Probably his first or second year, you maybe saw him try to bounce things from time to time, fresh from high school, fresh from Hillcrest, when he was going against Northridge, he was going against McAdory, Bessemer
Right.
City, high school teams that he could pretty much run any way he wanted to at that level. Well, at this level, as you said, he's not a speed guy. He's not a home run guy. His longest run in the game Saturday night was 15 yards, and that was on one of his 3 touchdown runs in the game. So Bryce Young actually had the longest run by an Alabama player with 16 yards in the game. So, no, you're right. I think as much as anything, it's a maturity thing with Brian Robinson. He's at a point where he's okay with the back that he is. And he also, you talk about maturity, physicality becomes a big part of maturity for backs when they're 5 years into it. And so a couple of his touchdown runs, the 15-yarder, and I want to say, what was it, an 8-yarder he had? And you saw him step through 2-3 would-be tacklers, either break tackles or just sort of walk through tacklers. No, he's very comfortable. And there's something to be said also in knowing that you're the guy. And he knows he's going to get 20 plus carries per game, especially with the way that rotation's set up right now.
Final note on the offensive side of the ball, Travis, can't go without addressing it. We keep things real here on Talkin' Tide. That Bryce Young scramble for the touchdown that got upheld, he lost that thing before it went over the goal line. I'm sorry.
But he recovered it, though, right?
Well,
I think that's what they said. They said he recovered his own fumble.
That I didn't. The TV broadcast didn't even.
No, that's where you got screwed by TV.
Yeah,
I don't
they didn't
think
even tell you that.
McElroy and the play-by-play guy ever got around to that. But even if you look if you look on the play log in the stat broadcaster in the box, you'll see where it says Bryce Young lost fumble, Bryce Young recovered fumble. So
Right.
that's something I don't think ESPN conveyed all that well on the broadcast.
Fooled me anyway, but
No, he did. I didn't think there, once they really stopped it frame by frame, it looked like the ball was coming loose just before he hit the goal line. But, and I don't think maybe the officials conveyed it all that well, to be fair to ESPN either. But I think that's sort of what got lost and also you had Heupel going nuts over on the Tennessee sideline. So they're cutting to that. There was a lot of stuff going on at that time.
Speaking of scrambles, Bryce Young maybe had his best day, or at least his most effective and efficient day running the ball, tucking it where he needed to. We saw him make a couple moves on guys, almost a little bit Jalen Hurts-like with a couple of those first down runs, an aspect of his game that seems to be developing in a positive way. Kind of knew he was that kind of athlete all along. He's also a guy that prefers to sit in the pocket and throw. We've talked about that as well. But there were some runs by Young throughout the game that were big for Alabama when the game was tight.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama converts 15 to 20 thirds. And so when we talk about a style or an identity for this Alabama offense, keeping it in Bryce Young's hands certainly works a good bit. We're not saying that isn't the case, because he was magnificent again on third downs throwing it. He averaged over 21 yards per completion on third down Saturday night. And then, as you said, he converted 4/3 with his legs, and 2 of those ended up going for touchdowns. So you're right. He showed he can certainly do that as sort of the undersized quarterback. I think Nick Saban and Bill O'Brien probably want him to be they want him to budget wisely when it comes to those opportunities and to make sure he takes care of himself physically. But no, there's no doubt you get this guy in the open field, he's a problem for inside linebackers and safeties.
Won't be any 30 carry games for Bryce Young like we saw with Matt Corral last week at Ole Miss.
You heard Nick post game last night. We don't really have any designed runs for Bryce.
Yeah.
So this ain't Jalen Hurts.
Defensively for Alabama, another big night for Will Anderson, sack and a half for him. I thought the front overall played pretty darn well, Travis. The back end, a different story. Obviously, a couple of busts in coverage. Had another deep ball completed over Josh Job's head where he just was late getting recognized on what the call was, and Tennessee was going fast and
quick snapped him. Yeah,
ran right by him before he even knew what the coverage was, I guess. But and I thought McElroy, speaking of the broadcast, did a pretty good job breaking down a couple of the issues Alabama had where they were playing outside leverage with corners and the routes were in breaking and there wasn't a safety there to help. Yeah. It's pretty simple.
It seemed to be, but between Alabama safeties and sub package personnel, they struggled early, and then Job had the issue later in the game. So, you even saw an in-game substitution with DeMarco Ellis coming on for Daniel Wright at that safety spot opposite Jordan Battle. So they're still trying to figure some things out right up the middle, in the middle of the field. I think Jalen Armour-Davis, Josh Jobe, even with Jobe giving up the explosive Saturday night, Jalen Armour-Davis has an interception, was nice because that was the only play in which an Alabama defensive back got a hand on a football all night. Didn't have a pass breakup in the game. So, and give Hendon Hooker a lot of credit. We talked about it late last week in the preview. This is a guy in SEC play, came in with 9 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He throws 3 more in the game Saturday night. He finally gets picked off in SEC play by Armour-Davis. But you said it, just too many breakdowns, too many explosive plays. Second time in the last 3 games that Alabama's allowed more than 9 yards per pass attempt, with this one coming against Tennessee.
I thought Hendon Hooker was impressive. That said, I don't think Alabama gave him everything. He made some nice throws. He's an athletic kid. I thought he was excellent for Tennessee. He looks to me like a guy who Josh Heupel can hopefully build around a little bit.
Yeah, he's perfect for what they do, with what they want out of the quarterback. I talked about it last week. I wonder what Kellen Mond would have done in an offense like that. But Hooker is, when you found out Saturday night And we talked about this last week. 2 different lines for the game. I guess it wouldn't have mattered. Alabama would have covered either of the lines, but it's a touchdown game going into the fourth quarter. So as you said early on so well, the score doesn't always tell truce in terms of time and in certain areas of the game. And that was definitely okay. I mean, Alabama scored 28 fourth quarter points, and that skewed things a good bit.
Secondary communication, though, probably the best way to sum up what needs to happen in practice this week from an improvement standpoint. Nick Saban did mention in the post game that the primary halftime adjustment back there was to go to more split safety coverage, which I guess made some sense given what happened in the first half. And I thought they gave up some plays in the second half too, but the first half was definitely the bigger issue.
Well, here was the thing, and you talked about this earlier. The front seven I thought was really good when you consider Tennessee came in averaging right around 250 rushing yards per game, and to hold Tennessee to 64. And I thought, Alabama, we outlined this possibility last week too, might go a little bigger in its nickel package on early downs. And that's what you saw with Bryce Young on the field to go along with a couple other defensive linemen and Will Anderson in that nickel front. So much here in the last couple of years, they've gone with 2 outside linebackers and 2 defensive linemen, even on early downs in that nickel. Well, it was sort of a throwback nickel for Alabama. So that was interesting to note. And, Bryce Young had his first full tackle for loss in the game Saturday night, Chase, since September 2019. More than 2 years. And it tells you again what he's dealt with from an injury perspective, but sort of lost in the play of the back end was that, as you said earlier, and we just talked about, I thought, the Alabama defensive line did get a lot of heat on Hendon Hooker. That's not really who those guys are. Fedarian Mathis had a sack there, I think, in the second half. So that was good to see. But the primary objective was still to minimize Jabari Small and Tyon Evans and Hooker in that zone read and that veer sort of run game, and they did a really good job of that.
Took care of that part of it, no question about it. The punt block, which you brought up earlier in the podcast by Braswell, coming at an awful time, of course. I'll say this. If Braswell has to run 6 a.m. laps for that or something, Travis, then Roydell Williams ought to be right there with him, because if the way I saw the play, if Braswell hadn't roughed him, Roydell would have roughed him. There were 3 guys there that might have roughed the player. It was not pretty.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And look, you understand guys are trying to make plays, but to hear Saban talk about it, I mean, maybe they were in a punt rush, a come and get it sort of scenario, but wow, they work on that. You go for the ball where the ball's going to be off the punter's foot. And then to have a punt blocked and you got one guy that splits your 2 personal protectors in Cameron Latou and Henry To'oTo'o on a rugby punt. And Nick already doesn't like that rugby crap. Now he gets one blocked, and Burnett, a couple other punts did a good job, but yeah, those are the type of plays that, if you start thinking ahead to potentially Georgia at some point down the line, you can't overcome 2, 3, 4 of those. 1 is going to be tough if you get to that spot. 2, 3, or 4 are what we saw from Alabama. And again, every phase of the game, that's going to be a lot.
Talkin' Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Moving forward now, we're going to tell you about a couple of sponsors for the program. We're going to start with North River Dental Associates. Former Alabama linebacker Jack Smalley can tackle every sort of dental need you and your family might have. Well-trained staff of dental hygienists there. They can handle porcelain veneers, cosmetic dentistry, pediatric dentistry, endodontics, laser dentistry, dentures. They do it all. The always popular teeth whitening services available to you at North River Dental as well. And, of course, they're also doing Botox and Juvederm treatments over at North River Dental. Give them a call at 752-3506. They're going to have you in and out in less than an hour with a routine cleaning typically, and they just do a fantastic job. Also see them online at northriverdentist.com. I'm
going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier, also in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. You know what happened after we talked about those chocolate cigars heading into the Tennessee game there at Peterbrook Chocolatier, Chase, they sold out. Every one of those chocolate cigars that were ready at Peterbrook Chocolatier were gone by game time Saturday night. So certainly a big thanks to the folks that made Peterbrook Chocolatier their destination of choice for their pregame treats. And of course, you got Halloween. I mean, we're going into Halloween week. And what does Halloween week mean? It means those caramel apples at Peterbrook that are coated in that homemade caramel and then dipped in either white, dark, or milk chocolate. You can get some accessories on those. You can pimp out those caramel chocolate dipped apples at Peterbrook. Get some maybe almonds, maybe some graham cracker crust on the outside. It's a perfect week for a caramel chocolate dipped apple from Peterbrook Chocolatier.
The best chocolate in Tuscaloosa, bar none, over there at Peterbrook. All right, finally, gonna tell you about DraftKings, our corporate sponsor. Hey, if you're an NFL fan, get the DraftKings Sportsbook app. DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. They've got you covered. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and if they do, you win $200 and free bets thereafter. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. It is that simple. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code you see right there if you're following us on YouTube, TPPN. That's the Pigskin Podcast Network acronym. That's your promo code to join. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. Win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win. With promo code TPPN this week at the DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. And Travis,
Goodbread, let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
What about the boys who had the over in Penn State, Illinois? In that 9 or 10? Huh? You think the man? They went to the man. Look, we didn't know they changed the rule where it only counts 2 points. We thought it was still doing it. Man's it.
Yeah, but you know what? For what got scored in regulation, they deserve to lose if they had the over.
Well,
anyway,
even
right?
in overtime, even if they would have counted them as 6 in extra points, I mean, neither one of those teams could get in the end zone from 3 yards. So how are they going to score points from the 25? So
how about this comment coming in, Travis, from one of
There's
our
a blast from the past.
Sam Matthews, former Alabama defensive lineman, checking in with us.
Big Sam from the mid-90s. Yeah, that's my guy right there.
There you have it.
Thanks, Sam. We appreciate it. But yeah, the man when there's rule changes like that too, he doesn't always let you know about those changes.
No.
So you're going into that overtime thing, and I got the over. This thing goes 4 or 5 overtime. No.
It's a different game now with that 2-point rule. There's no doubt about it.
Man just shrugs his shoulders, when you come to him with that. The dog ate my homework. He just shrugs his...
They pay for a lot of neon out there in Las Vegas.
Never turn the lights out. You ever notice that? The lights stay on out there 24 hours a day.
They got the generators if they need them out there. All right, we bounce around the Southeastern Conference for you now like we always do. Travis, not a whole lot to get into around the league this week. Ole Miss 31, LSU 17. That's probably the one we'll focus on. Of course, that was the 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central CBS game, kind of the marquee game, if you will. Not that LSU deserved marquee billing for the year that they've had, and they come up pretty short in this one. Ole Miss really buried them. I think LSU might have popped a touchdown late with Garrett Nussmeier getting a little bit of action. But
Doug's son. Yeah,
that's right. But this was Ole Miss's game from the jump.
Well, and it was pretty simple, or at least if you just want to look at it from a simplistic viewpoint. Don't allow Ty Davis-Price to rush for 270 plus yards, and guess what? You got a good chance of winning. And so poor Florida fans. Florida's off this weekend, but they've got to sit and watch the Ole Miss defense do something against Ty Davis-Price that they couldn't do the previous week. So it started well for LSU. Pretty good start to the game for LSU, but give DJ Durkin, defensive coordinator for Ole Miss, and that defense again for really a second straight week kind of bailed out the Rebels. Matt Corral playing less than 100%, so not the type of numbers you've come to expect from him, but pretty good day to be a Rebel with Eli Manning being honored with his ceremony there in Oxford. So I know Ole Miss people, they never get tired of beating LSU.
Manning painted in the end zones
How
in
about
Oxford
that?
for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. But
Put
yeah,
that one under things you'll never see at Alabama.
that's right. No question. Yeah. Ole Miss running game really, I thought, gashed LSU around the edges too, Travis, especially in the first half. LSU just could not set an edge defensively. And so it was a day where Matt Corral didn't have to be Superman.
You know where else it doesn't hurt to have Manning in the end zones on Saturday? Because little Och was in attendance, the 5-star quarterback, Cuppa's boy in that 2023 class. So not a bad day to have Manning anywhere you could have it there in at the Vaught.
We're going to guess here that that's no accident.
Yeah.
With Arch in attendance. Big wins for the West over the East. Travis 3-0 against the East head-to-head. Not only does Alabama beat Tennessee in fairly convincing fashion, but Mississippi State routs Vanderbilt. Texas A&M routs South Carolina. Neither one of those two games close. West seems to be the best once again, I think, at least at this point in the year. That's plain enough to me.
Yeah, I mean, once you get past Georgia in the East right now, you've got Ole Miss playing really good football. You've got Texas A&M playing better football. If you're an Alabama fan, you're loving that with Ole Miss and A&M. First of all, because Ole Miss is your best win to date right now, and A&M's your lone loss. So you want A&M to win out as best it can. Although I guess we're still going to have A&M and Ole Miss play, so one of those is going to get a loss in that head-to-head. So. Yeah, top to bottom, LSU beat Florida 2 Saturdays ago, as we know. So it's been more of that of late for sure.
It's going to wrap things up here on the Talkin' Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. For Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com, I'm Chase Goodbread of NFL.com and Crimson Cover Television. Be sure to join us midweek when we reconvene right here on Talkin' Tide.